The air still vibrated with the ghost of laughter and bass, a hollow echo in the sudden quiet of my sprawling suburban home. Empty cups and discarded napkins littered every surface like confetti after a parade, the only remaining evidence of the riotous celebration for my son Josh's 21st birthday. As I moved through the familiar, lonely ritual of post-party cleanup, the clink of wine glasses under hot water, the sigh of a trash bag being tied, I felt the weight of my own 58 years settle more heavily on my shoulders. This was the script of my life, the gracious host, the reliable mom, the quietly receding background to everyone else's vibrant story. I was preparing for another stretch of silent evenings, for the kind of deep, familiar quiet that feels less like peace and more like a slow settling of dust. But then, a soft knock on the kitchen doorframe shattered that expectation, and what followed wasn't just a conversation. It was an earthquake in the carefully ordered landscape of my heart, a seismic shift that began with a single, devastatingly honest compliment from the last person I ever expected to truly see me, my son's best friend. He stayed late to help clean up, a simple act of decency that became the gateway to a connection so profound it would rewrite my understanding of love, desire, and what it means to be truly alive at any age. What unfolded between us that night, and in the raw, vulnerable months that followed, is a testament to the fact that the most soul-stirring connections often arrive unannounced, dressed in the familiar, and have the power to dismantle every rule you thought you lived by. The evening had been a glorious, deafening success, a tidal wave of youthful energy that left my ordinarily serene home buzzing in its wake. Balloons, their vibrant helium spent, now drifted lazily across the ceiling like lost, colorful thoughts, while abandoned soda cans stood sentinel on every available surface. I was adrift in the aftermath, my body moving on autopilot through the mess, my mind a pleasant blank of hostess fatigue. The last of the taillights had vanished down our tree-lined street, swallowing Josh and a carful of friends heading for a late-night diner run. The silence they left behind was profound, a thick, buzzing thing that filled the spaces where music and shouting had been just moments before. It was in this resonant quiet that I heard the soft, deliberate tap on the doorframe behind me. I turned, expecting my son, maybe coming to sheepishly apologize for the chaos or raid the refrigerator one last time. But the figure silhouetted against the dim hallway light was taller, broader, more solid. It was Kyle. "Hey, Mrs. Anderson," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble that seemed to vibrate in the new quiet. He stood with his hands tucked into the pockets of his worn leather jacket, an image of casual, contained strength. "I just wanted to thank you again. This was a really great night." I offered a tired maternal smile, the hostess in me automatically surfacing. "You can drop the Mrs. Kyle. You've been eating my food and clogging my shower drain since you were 15. It's Helen." He laughed, a gentle, genuine sound, and stepped fully into the kitchen's golden light. And that's when I truly saw him. Not as Josh's lanky friend, the boy who devoured countless plates of spaghetti at this very table, but as a man. The transformation was startling. The softness of adolescence had been carved away, leaving sharp, defined angles at his jaw and cheekbones. His shoulders strained the fabric of his simple t-shirt, and his height seemed to fill the doorway. But it was his eyes of deep, thoughtful hazel that held me captive. They met mine with a directness that felt entirely new, and in their depths flickered an intensity I couldn't name. "Well, thank you, Helen," he said, my name sounding deliberate, weighted on his tongue. "Can I help clean up?" I waved a dismissive hand, the dish towel fluttering. "You're a guest. You don't need to." "I want to," he interjected softly, already moving past me with an easy confidence to gather scattered plates from the coffee table. Asterisk, besides, Josh and the others left in a bit of a rush. "I figured you could use a hand." There was a charge in his insistence, a subtle shift in the dynamic that made my breath catch just slightly. I hesitated, then nodded, falling back on practicality. All right, but you're not escaping until you have a slice of that monstrous chocolate cake. We worked in a companionable, yet electrically charged, quiet for a while. The rhythm was familiar. I rinsed. He loaded the dishwasher. I wiped counters. He bagged trash, but every movement, every accidental brush of sleeves felt amplified. I was hyper-aware of his presence, the sheer physicality of him, the quiet efficiency of his movements, the faint, clean scent of soap and night air that clung to him. You always throw the best parties, he said after a long pause, his back to me as he scrubbed out a stubborn bit of frosting. Even back in high school, I remember your house always felt safe. That word safe landed between us with the weight of a confession. It was more than a compliment on my hospitality. It was a key turning in a long locked door. I stopped, the damp towel in my hands going still. Thank you, I said, my voice softer than I intended. I tried to make it that way. The world, there's enough out there that doesn't feel safe. Kyle turned, leaning against the sink and drying his hands. His gaze was unwavering. I used to think it was just about your 7-layer dip and Josh's video game collection, he mused. But it was more than that. You let us be ourselves here. You didn't talk down to us. You listened. You actually saw us. The weight of his words settled deep in my chest, awakening a dormant ache for recognition. It's rare to be seen, he added. Really seen, especially by an adult when you're just a kid trying to figure it all out. I attempted a joke to deflect the sudden, profound intimacy. Well, I always thought you kids were infinitely more interesting than most of the adults I knew. But Kyle didn't smile. His expression remained open, serious. Can I ask you something, Helen? The deliberate use of my name again sent a faint shiver down my spine. Of course. He took a small, unconscious step closer, closing the distance just enough that I had to tilt my head up slightly. Have you ever wanted to go back? Not to being young, but to that feeling of being noticed, truly appreciated, like you mattered in a way that wasn't just about what you could do for someone else? The question was a lance piercing through decades of layered composure. It hung in the air between us, shimmering and dangerous. No one asked me things like that, not my son, not my friends over glasses of Chardonnay, not my ex-husband in the lonely, fading years of our marriage. My identity had become a series of functions: mother, ex-wife, reliable friend, efficient employee. The core of me felt like a forgotten artifact. I think, I whispered, the words pulled from a deep, lonely place. Everyone wants that. To matter, especially when the house gets quiet and the days start to feel longer than they used to. He nodded, his eyes locked on mine, and for a dizzying moment, the entire universe contracted to the space of my kitchen, to the few feet of air humming between us. I see you, Helen, he said, his voice so gentle it was devastating. Not just as Josh's mom, but you. And I think I always have. The air grew thick, warm, saturated with a tension that was both terrifying and thrilling. A heat flushed my cheeks. I turned abruptly to the refrigerator, meeting a barrier. Would you like that cake now? I asked, hearing the faint tremor in my own voice. He smiled then, a slow, understanding curve of his lips that seemed to acknowledge the seismic shift he'd caused. Sure, he said, but only if you join me. We sat at the worn oak table, the hum of the appliance the only sound. The cake was rich, but the moment was infinitely sweeter, layered with a delicate, palpable tension. We began to talk, and it was a conversation unlike any we'd ever had. We spoke of books that had shaped us, films that echoed our loneliness, dreams we'd nurtured and dreams we'd quietly released into the past. He told me he'd always admired my courage. "You have this strength," he said, "but it's soft. You're warm, grounded. It's rare." Each word was a brushstroke on the canvas of my soul, painting a portrait of a woman I barely recognized but yearned to be. The clock became irrelevant. The candles guttered, casting dancing shadows over the sharp planes of his face. He looked down, then up, his gaze searing in the dim light. "I don't know if this is out of line," he began, each word measured. "And I need you to know I mean this with the utmost respect. But I think you're incredibly beautiful." The silence that followed was vast and resonant. It wasn't awkward or lewd. It was spacious, filled with the profound honesty he had placed within it. "Kyle, my voice failed. I'm not trying to disrespect you," he said quickly, his eyes earnest. "I just needed to say it. I've thought it for years. And tonight, I couldn't leave without telling you." My fingers trembled against my wine glass. I was not offended. I was awakened. A dormant part of me stirred, stretching toward the radiant heat of his attention. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, which was my own stark truth. "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "I just wanted you to know." In his gaze, I saw not a boy, but a man of startling emotional courage. And in that sustained moment, something within me broke and reformed. A door long sealed began to creak open. When he stood to leave, his hand brushed mine, an accident of proximity that felt like a lightning strike. "Good night, Helen." "Good night, Kyle." The click of the front door was both an end and a beginning. I stood in the sudden quiet, my heart pounding a slow, awakening rhythm. The silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was full, electric, with the residue of being seen. I caught my reflection in the dark window, a woman with smudged makeup and loose hair, a glimmer in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The following days were a blur of normalcy pierced through with secret revelation. I moved through my routines, but my mind was a reel of his words, his look, that fleeting touch. Josh mentioned offhandedly that Kyle had stayed late, calling him the solid one, which anchored the experience in reality. Then a text arrived as I was drawing a bath. "Helen, I hope I didn't cross a line. I meant every word, but if I made you uncomfortable, I am truly sorry." My reply was a leap of faith. "You didn't cross a line. You surprised me, but not in a bad way. I've just forgotten what it feels like to be seen like that. Thank you." His response was an invitation. Would it be okay if I stopped by tomorrow? Just to talk. Every sensible instinct said no, but the woman he had awakened said yes. He came the next afternoon, bearing coffee black for him, hazelnut for me. He remembered. We sat on the back porch, and with a calm bravery he laid his heart bare. He spoke of his admiration not as a fleeting crush, but as a deep-seated recognition that had grown over years. "I don't expect anything," he said. "This isn't about some teenage fantasy. I just needed you to know what's been in my heart." I let myself feel it then, not shame, but the slow, terrifying unfurling of possibility. "I don't know where this goes," I whispered, "but I haven't felt this alive in a very long time." What followed was not a whirlwind affair, but a quiet mutual blooming. He began stopping by with small offerings, a book, pastries, a reason to fix a loose hinge. We talked for hours, unraveling our histories. He shared the pain of his parents' bitter divorce, the emotional absence he'd endured, and how my home had been his sanctuary. I confessed my abandoned dreams, the years of prioritizing everyone else's needs, the quiet despair of a future that seemed to promise only diminishment. One twilight, as fireflies sparked in the garden, he reached for my hand. His touch was a question, tender and warm. I didn't pull away. His thumb stroked my knuckles, and that simple contact spoke of a connection deeper than words. I know this might seem unconventional, he said, but you're someone I've always looked up to. And now I see you in a different light, a beautiful, radiant light. His bravery dismantled my fears. The world's potential judgment began to matter less than the profound truth of his regard. Our relationship deepened with a gentle gravity. He started staying later, our conversation stretching into the quiet heart of the night. One evening, lost in laughter on the couch, he leaned closer, his hand on my knee. The air changed, charged with a tender ache. I reached up, brushing his temple. He leaned into the touch, and when he kissed me, it was with a heartbreaking slowness, a reverence that felt less like passion and more like homecoming. It was the kiss that resurrected the woman I thought time had erased. Afterwards, wrapped in a shared silence, he whispered, "You're not a passing thought to me, Helen. You never were." We navigated the complexity with care. We ventured out together, facing curious glances and raised eyebrows at the farmer's market. His hand would find mine, a solid, defiant reassurance. "You okay?" he'd ask. And to my surprise, I was. The joy of being with him outweighed the fear of gossip. But the central complication remained Josh. The secret began to feel like a betrayal. One night over tea, Kyle voiced what we both felt. He deserves to know. From us, the dread was palpable, but his courage was contagious. I invited Josh for a dinner, just us. The meal was strained with my unspoken anxiety. Finally, I forced the words out. "Josh, I need to talk to you about Kyle." I told him everything, my voice trembling but clear. The shock on his face was a physical blow. He retreated into a stiff, hurt silence. "How long?" he finally asked, his voice flat. "Since your birthday," I admitted. The processing was visible, painful. Then he spoke, his words shattering my fear. "I always knew you were lonely," he said softly. "I don't love the idea. It's weird, but you deserve to be happy. And Kyle, he's one of the best guys I know." His embrace, when it came, was forgiveness and love. The hardest part was over. Our love, now out in the open with my son's reluctant blessing, grew stronger, more rooted. We built a life in the small, sacred details, shared coffee, cooking together, the quiet comfort of his presence in my home. It was a profound, sustaining happiness. Then, on a perfect summer morning, he told me about the job offer in Seattle, a dream opportunity at a prestigious firm. I saw the crossroads before him, remembered my own sacrificed chances. "You should go," I said, the words tearing at me, even as I knew they were right. The pain in his eyes mirrored my own. "What about us?" "I don't know," I whispered, "but I will not be the anchor that holds you back. You have to fly." We chose a painful, necessary faith over a clinging fear. We spent his remaining weeks storing memories, loving with a bittersweet intensity. The morning he left, his kiss was a promise of until, not goodbye. I watched his car disappear, the hollow in my chest a testament to the depth of what we had. The silence of the house afterward was filled with his echo. I moved through my days changed, carrying the certainty of his love as an armor against loneliness. Josh checked in often, our bond deepened by the shared trial. Months later, on a crisp autumn day, I found a cream-colored envelope in the mailbox, addressed in his strong hand. A letter. Sitting at our kitchen table, I opened it. He wrote of his work, the rain in Seattle, of growing and learning. And then, but there's a part of me, the most essential part, I think, that never left. "It's still in your kitchen?" I'm wondering, hoping, if maybe when this chapter is complete, you might let me come back home. To you. I pressed the paper to my heart, smiling through tears. The future remained unwritten, but the love was an unbreakable thread, stretching across the miles, patient and sure. Our story was a testament that the most powerful connections defy convention, that being truly seen is a form of resurrection, and that sometimes love is brave enough to let go and faithful enough to find its way back.